Now, thank you, Nancy. After I reminded you, then I forgot. A day or two after I was pronounced in good mental shape, I almost drove out of a parking place with my rear door open. I'd rather not remember who the president is and remember to close the car doors. Very briefly, I know some of you know this routine like your way home, and for some of you it's probably new. So I have a very short, and I will keep it short because we might have a full evening. I'll try to talk less and talk fast. The problem is if I talk too fast, I talk faster than I think, and that doesn't end well. Most of you, many of you, what I call your adventure in zoning began when you contacted the zoning officer for what is called a determination, and he does his job well. His job is to make sure that applicants and board members and everybody else who is concerned knows what the zoning ordinance that we are working with under know what it says, what it allows, what it doesn't allow. And then your next stop was before the York City Planning Commission Monday a week ago, and they considered your application, your case, and then they vote to recommend to us, the Zoning Hearing Board, that we either approve or deny whatever we're asked to consider. And I always emphasize that we also have the benefit of the staff recommendation, and we value all the recommendations, but then we make up our own mind, and that isn't always easy because oftentimes we have to weigh pros and cons. And in this case, in every case this evening, I don't know if you all noticed, but in every case this evening, the staff recommendation was to deny everything. That's all right. They're doing their job. They're letting us know what the letter of the ordinance says. And then the Planning Commission voted to recommend approval of everything. So we'll do what we always do. We try to do our best. We try to weigh pros and cons. We try to weigh conflicting opinions presented to us here in the meeting. And we don't, I'm sure none of us form a firm opinion until the last witness has spoken. If anyone has, and many, as most of you probably do, would you turn your cell phone either to vibrate or off? We all enjoy Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, but we might not like to hear it interrupt someone's testimony this evening. I think that's enough. Would everyone who may want to testify this evening please stand and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that
let me just, if anybody has any inkling that they might want to testify tonight, you might as well stand and be sworn now. It doesn't do any harm to stand and be sworn now. That way it won't have to happen later. So if you're on the fence, I would say just go ahead and do it now.
Thanks. Where was I? Oh. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give here this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? a room full of people who were probably as honest as could be, sworn or not, but we have to do it. I guess we're ready for case number 30.
We are.
It's a, you know,
This is,
coming
yeah,
back from last
this is, case number 30-2024-Z-V/SE. By way of reminder, this is a case which was, tabled at last month's meeting. The applicant and owner of the property is Mike J. Miller of 4637 Farringer Drive, York, Pennsylvania. The subject property is located at 261 Roosevelt Avenue in the city of York, which is in the UN2 Urban Residential Neighborhood Zoning District of the city of York. Applicant seeks 2 variances to permit the conversion of an existing 3-unit dwelling to a 4-unit dwelling. First, the applicant seeks a variance to permit up to 4 dwelling units, which number of dwelling units exceeds the maximum allowable density. Next, the applicant seeks a variance to reduce the required number of off-street parking spaces. The application was reviewed by the planning staff of the city of York. The planning staff recommended approval of the requested variances. The case was heard by the City of York Planning Commission on October 14th, 2024. By way of unanimous vote, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the requested variances. The existing record before the board consists of the application itself and August 27th, 2024 letter from zoning officer McMillian, the deed to the subject property, 4 pages of floor plans and aerial view of the subject property, 41 pages of photos of the subject property. There was an errant receipt, I believe, that might have gotten in there, as well as a City of York receipt. We were provided this evening as supplement to the record 16 pages of color photos of the subject property.
And they're beautiful, my opinion. And nobody corrected me. Forget the wellness interview. It's real life I'm having challenges with. I forgot one of the most important things, and that was to introduce who we are. And nobody, you're too kind. You're too kind.
They can read the names.
We're going to start, what?
I said they can read the names.
They could, well, but
We keep moving.
it's still, because we have a new alternate member at your left end of the table. Lester Abbott was only sworn in 2 nights ago. And Diana, our esteemed city clerk, said he should get to work tonight, so here he is. He is our second alternate, and I cannot recall in 23 years that we've ever had 2 alternates. So that's a luxury we're not used to. Next is Adam Nugent.
Hello.
Nick Holman. Sina Jenkins is our vice chair, and I'm Franklin Williams, chairing the board. Now, is there anything else? Yeah, our solicitor is Andy Harold, and our stenographer is Karen Brown. And please don't 2 people talk at once. I don't know how they take down the verbatim record of the proceeding, but they do. But they can't take down 2 people talking over each other. You look like a very well-mannered group, and everyone who wants to say something pertinent will have their chance. Mike, I'm not sure. I think we know your story. We know what you presented in testimony, I think, last month. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work. I can't think of any other questions that I would have. I'll turn it over to anyone else.
Looks like great work.
Thank you.
I know that now, I did think of the parking issue, that, as I recall, you said that there is no off-street parking right with, 261. But you own 259 right next door, and,
I own 259 right next door with 3 garages and off-street parking. And
So-
I'm asking for the variance because my house is landlocked.
right. Would anyone like to make a
Yeah, hi,
motion?
Mr. Miller.
Yes, sir.
I'm still, I loved your pictures too, the work looks great. I'm still a little concerned, you're trying to get a 4th apartment. It looks like there's a 4th apartment on the top floor. The problem I have is the square footage. I mean, the square footage is a, let me get to my notes here a second.
430 square feet.
I'm talking about what's required to call it an apartment,
I got you.
okay? And even an efficiency apartment is 400 square feet. Your 3rd floor apartment D is below that. So I'm not sure, that just seems, that irks me a little bit. I mean,
Well,
it's,
all due respect too, there are houses out there with only 500 square feet, so, and you have people in the city of York that are sharing common spaces such as bathrooms, kitchens, and everything. This has its own bathroom, full bath, kitchen, and bed area. So, we're talking about low income housing here, so it might be necessary for just one person.
well, again, I'll even go to apartment B too, because I'm just trying to follow the ordinance, okay?
Sure.
The ordinance for a 2-bedroom, which you're calling the apartment B 1st floor, is supposed to be over 700 square feet.
Gotcha.
How much does that square footage? Based on what I added up, it's a lot less than that.
Yeah, I forget what it was in the packet.
It's,
Oh, no.
I'll remind you, it's 496.
Okay.
And that includes everything. And you're not even supposed to include things like the breezeway and stuff like that. I threw in everything just to give it more square footage. So again, it's hard to call that a 2-bedroom apartment.
Well, we call it a one bedroom, then, whatever you'd like. The guy actually has 2 rooms in there, and he actually keeps his bed in a bump out. And he actually has a whole room he doesn't have one item in the whole room. So I don't think he even needs 2 rooms or whatever you would consider a 2-bedroom, so.
Okay. Well, if you call it something other than a bedroom, because I mean, one of them's 56 square feet. That's what you're calling a bedroom, which is really small. That's like a closet, okay?
I think.
And maybe we can just call that, between me and you, we'll call it a walk-in closet, okay?
Okay.
since
and
it's
that-
right off his
that's the
bedroom.
closet, but-
Okay? And to make this work even better is, because I like your work, and I'm trying to get this blessed. 3rd floor, call it an efficiency, okay? It's like 20 square feet away from being what it's supposed to be, but it's probably, if everybody on this board is okay with it, we can call it an efficiency instead of a 1-bedroom apartment, okay? In your write-ups, okay? All right, that's all I have to say about that. So what we're looking at is 3-bedroom apartment with an efficiency,
Okay.
okay?
I mean, with all due respect, sir, they did build it like that, so, I mean.
Yeah, but you're up
I
here,
can't stretch the
you're trying to
walls.
get licensed here, okay? So there's a
I mean,
little bit of
that's
difference.
what I was asking for. I don't, honestly, I think it's a problem within your system. I don't think I should have had to come in front of the zoning board, because I applied, I registered and inspected this when I bought it, right? So I worked on it the last 3 years, and then I went to register and inspect it with the city, and then they told me I had to come here. Which
Because
makes
it
no
was-
sense, because it was already existing, I just did the right thing and registered it properly.
It appears that it was registered as a 3-unit, not a 4-unit. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the problem.
The previous owners didn't have the money to fix it.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's,
And then
our board
I
is to
fixed it
approve the
and registered
rules.
it, so.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna register it.
All right.
That efficiency that you're talking about, all the different things you mentioned, that is all in that unit?
Yes,
Okay.
it has its own everything,
Okay, thank you.
and it was all existing too. It's not like I just came up with it or
But my,
decided to put anything in there or anything, it was on its own.
my point is, just because the previous owner put something in, doesn't make it
I think that-
legal, okay? Just listen to what I'm saying,
Yes, sir.
please,
Yes, sir.
okay?
I'm trying to-
And yes, please listen. Just because there was 4 units in it, doesn't mean it's legal with the city. Okay? So, and it's something you could have brought up with your realtor before you bought the place, and got it inspected before that. That's the end of the story there. So right now, you're trying to get the 4th unit. I understand that. It was approved for 3. We're trying to get 4. I'm trying to get you the 4th one.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I see in your pictures that you gave us tonight, it does have the 4 separate meters.
Yes, it was always under its own power.
Okay,
Its own power, water, gas, and sewer, it always had.
okay, but that 4th meter is not in there. Have you added that yet?
No, I was waiting for this answer so I can get my electrical inspection, so I can continue with what I have to do.
Okay, and then you would add that one and then we'll put that one on
Yes,
it separate.
Basically, they would come out and inspect it, your city would inspect it, and then it would come out and bring me the meter.
Okay, thank you.
So it already has a place for it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else?
I'm good.
Go. Everybody good?
I want to move to approve dimensional variance for multifamily conversion from a different use found in section 1304.01-1.02.002 to include conversion of a 3-unit home into 4 units for the property at 261 Roosevelt Avenue in the UN2 zoning district.
Is second it?
It's been moved by Mr. Nugent and seconded by Ms. Jenkins to approve the variance, the dimensional variance. Calling the vote, Mr. Abbott?
You know,
He didn't
yeah,
hear.
it occurs to me that he probably should not vote in this case because he was not here at the last case for the bulk of the testimony.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll get some work in a few minutes.
That's fine.
Mr. Nugent?
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins?
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
And I move to approve a variance to the required number of parking spaces as defined in section 1304.01-03.001.d at 261 Roosevelt Avenue in the UN2 zoning district.
And just to clarify this, is this I forgot this file from last month. Is this to waive any off-street parking requirement? Or is it to reduce from a number to a number? Monty, do you know?
You've got,
They said it'd be going to 0 because he's landlocked.
So it's a motion to waive
To waive the parking.
off-street parking requirement.
right, do we need to mention the other apartment, or is it just?
Not if you're gonna waive it, no.
All right, so the motion stands as is?
To waive, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Nugent and seconded by Ms. Jenkins to waive the requirement for off-street parking spaces. Calling for the vote, Mr. Nugent?
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins?
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Ms. McMillan and Ms. Griffin too. They're great.
Yes. Thank you. Good luck.
Okay. The next case is case number 31-2024-Z-V. The applicant and owner of the property is Emmanuel Community Development Corporation of 825 East Princess Street, York, Pennsylvania. The subject property is located at 835 East Princess Street, which address is in the RS2 Single Family Attached Residential Conservation District of the City of York. Applicant seeks 2 variances to permit the use of the subject property as a rooming house. First, the applicant seeks a use variance to permit a rooming house in the RS2 zoning district, which does not permit a rooming house either by right or by special exception. Next, the applicant seeks a variance to permit rooms less than 250 square feet in size as required by the ordinance. The application was reviewed by the planning staff of the City of York. The planning staff recommends denial of both requested variances. The case was heard by the City of York Planning Commission on November 11th, 2024. By way of unanimous vote, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the requested variances. The record before the board this evening consists of the application itself, a table of contents, a zoning narrative, a 23-page photo gallery, the deed to the subject property, a letter of intention to lease, a September 1st letter, a list of church board members, an aerial view of the subject property, 6 pages of floor plans of the subject property, and an August 7th letter from zoning officer McMillan.
Thank you. Would someone come to the podium, please? Dr. McMillan? And you do pronounce it McMillan?
Yes, I do.
Because is it spelled with an A in the, towards the end?
It is.
It is, but McMillan is fine.
Yes, that is absolutely.
Okay.
And what is your first name?
Deborah,
Deborah. Deborah or Debra?
O-R-A-H.
Thank you.
And there was a glitch, I don't know if you're aware of it, but there was a glitch in the recording system, and 8 minutes of your testimony was lost at the Planning Commission. So it'll be new to me. Would you tell us what you'd like to do here?
Good evening. I am the chairperson of the Emmanuel Community Development Corporation. I have been commissioned by, not just me, but our whole corporation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and commissioned by our church, Emmanuel Church of God in Christ, to develop housing for homeless female veterans within the property that was called rectory for our church. In the rectory, before the church bought the property, it belonged to St. Joseph's Catholic Church. And in that rectory, the priests lived, or the nuns, and it had about 8 bedrooms with about 4 bathrooms. And when we bought the actual property, our pastor was living in the home with caretakers for him. And now that our pastor has passed on, we do have a new pastor, but he does not live in that home. We wanted to use the home for providing housing for homeless female veterans and their needs. Part of, as I don't know if you're familiar with the area that the actual property is in, it's at 835 East Princess Street. It is a single-family detached dwelling. It is approximately 4,000 square feet in square footage. It's in an approved opportunity zone, as well as a HUD qualified census tract, and it also is designated as a medically indigent underserved tract by the U.S. Health Resources and Services Administration, which we call HRSA. So on that property, we have decided that we'd like to 4% are homeless. And you say, well, that's not a big number, but 4%, it should be 0% are homeless. 0%. And 10% of those have food insecurity, they're having issues with their children, finding adequate housing. There's some unemployment issues as well as mental health issues, which you do expect, financial issues, and safety issues. Those who are out on the street are definitely less safe than those who are in proper housing. There's nutritional issues that become, again, food insecurity. Being out on the street does not afford them sometimes access to benefits because there's no permanent address that they can receive mail or information. So this provides that kind of access for them. And also, there are, even coming out of the military, I'm sure that many of them still have certain issues related to what we call PTSD, mental illness, drug and alcohol use. So we are not a treatment center for providing housing, but we do wish to provide also case management for them to be directed to services that are going to help them as they hopefully transition from the homeless state to a more permanent state. So we don't feel the housing will be permanent, but we do feel that it's definitely more likely transitional in nature, and but it's still needed. We propose 6 bedrooms. As I said, the building actually houses about 8. It would house 8 individuals, but according to the coding for the city, they only allow 6 bedrooms for a boarding house. So that's what we're proposing as well. And some of these rooms will have shared bathrooms. Some of them will have private bathrooms. Part of their ability to live off the street will require that there are some needs that they have, like clothing, food, all of these types of things will be hopefully provided in our facility until they're on their feet to do that. Or we wish to also provide work training, also arts and crafts to improve their ability to just enjoy life, and a place to have their belongings safe, although we don't expect a lot of belongings, but whatever they have, we would like it to be in a safe place, and hopefully this would help not only the veterans. We feel this building at this time, even though it stands vacant, vacant buildings are not good. We know that. We've had vandalism to building, so we do want to get the building occupied, and we feel this is an excellent program for occupying the building and giving women who are homeless a chance to start their lives again. Thank you. Any other questions?
Why everybody looking at me?
Thank you. Just one question for the audience. Is anyone here specifically for this case?
Yes,
Okay, just, okay, gotcha.
He's with you, right? Okay, no, we were just asking if there was anyone that wanted to weigh in. Would they be responsible for their own food and things like that?
we have a kitchen area that will be shared, but we wish to have what is called a supervising or house manager.
Okay.
Who will stay on property, who will help make sure that food and just basic living needs are taken care of, and that their rooms, that they're caring for their rooms and their spaces that they're living in. We don't expect them to be like grooming police, but we do want them to maintain proper order within their living space. But there will be a house manager on site.
Good evening, Doctor. I had a couple questions. First off, is your husband the Reverend?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I was trying to link it all together. And the church that's right next to it is the church?
That is the church name.
Thank you, ma'am. The first question I really had was since you're taking in female veterans, is there gonna be a charge to live at the place? Because, I mean, that's what a rooming house is. And since most of them are homeless, I mean, I assume it's gonna be I see your agreement between the church and your organization for the $1 rent for a year. So I'm sure that some kind of rent is gonna be asked for, and maybe it's as needed or as they can afford it. That was my first question is, rent is gonna be charged, and I don't need to know the exact amount, but I just wanted to know yes or no if you were accepting rent.
Yes, we will be accepting rent.
Okay.
And our case manager will help them access VA benefits through HUD-VASH and other Medicaid
Okay.
possibilities. So we'll seek the funding that's needed for their housing. But we will, we're not expecting to have any extraordinary gain
Okay.
in this project or anything that, would be considered profitable or non-profit.
Okay. The second question I had was, you mentioned a case manager. Since it's a boarding house, there's supposed to be somebody there living, and are they gonna be living in one of the bedrooms that's,
These house manager will. And
House
they'll
manager.
coordinate with the case manager.
Okay.
The case manager may come in and out, but, they'll be initially screened as well as admitted for, treatment. We also will be coordinating with the VA, and, there is a, VA, I think, caseworker here in New York that also will help with us. We've talked with her. She will not only help us in terms of helping them obtain benefits, but also with, I guess, more of like directing individuals who might need help to us as well.
okay. And I guess, my last question is there's more than 6 bedrooms in this place. It looks like there's 8 maybe, or even a little more. And, so the house manager will be in one, 6 of them will be used. I mean, and this is coming from a 30-year vet myself. Personally, I think you could use the 7th one as, you wouldn't even have to charge anybody. I mean, if somebody needed it off the street. And, I'll just throw that out as since you're calling it a 6-bedroom and you have a 7th bedroom, maybe it's available for something else.
For emergency, we also
Absolutely.
would like to have an emergency shelter.
I like your project. Thank you very much.
Dr. McMillan, I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for this idea. It is very well needed, mainly in the city of York. I work with veterans, Nancy and I both. I'm actually president of an auxiliary, and she is my vice president. So we know that there is a need for this. If you're approved tonight, I would like to meet with you at some point, because there is a lot of things, once they get an address, there will be doors that can open for them. Okay?
And the Department of Veterans Association or Veterans Affairs has at least identified women who are homeless and who are insecure in their housing as one of the major issues for female veterans.
We also have a trailer that we get donated clothing. So that's why we want to connect with you, because this is like a blessing to me that something like this is coming about.
I'm sure there is need, I have no doubt. But this, over the years, we've had 2 or 3 kind of similar in some ways the Methodist Church at Newberry and Philadelphia Street had a beautiful brick house next to it that had been the parsonage, and a new minister came and said he lived elsewhere nearby and he didn't want to live there. So they came up with, I thought, a very interesting idea to create sort of a fellowship for college students who would commit to some sort of service for the city in some very useful, needed way, and doing that service for at least, I don't forget, 10 or 15 hours a week in lieu of rent. And then there was another proposal for housing conversion to apartment studios for artists. And that time I had to ask, what if you don't find that many artists? Will you rent to people who think they love art, but they wouldn't consider themselves an artist? I think it would be wonderful if I know there's need, I know it, but I think it would be wonderful if there wasn't that much need right away. I guess I'm wondering if you have thought about, if you don't fill this house, what then? Will you, have you figured some way to maybe slightly expand your reach to another type of need, or?
They won't need to.
If we are unable to fill all of our bed, which we had imagined would not probably be a big case, but there are, like the cutback and various financing operations. We can, I'm told by the person who is going to be doing case management for us that we can designate that several beds, 2 to 3 beds, can be used for women who are just homeless and not necessarily renters. So that way, if they need it, or if we don't want beds to be just empty sitting, if there is another need. But we have thought about it.
Is there anyone in the audience who has any questions or testimony regarding this case?
They did ask that.
Seeing no one, hearing no one. Anything else from the board?
All set.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I want this one. All right, go ahead.
Thanks. We're arguing up here who's gonna do it. One other thing, Doctor, is your package was great. I thought the pictures were excellent. I mean, the kitchen looks brand new with the appliances in it. It's just a super package. Okay, case number 31-2024-V-Z, actually, at 835 East Princess Street. I move to approve a variance that each room be larger than 250 square feet as defined in section 1304.02-7.17.B1 at 835 East Princess Street in the RS2 zoning district.
I second it.
Just to clarify, it says that each room be larger. I think it should say that to permit rooms smaller than
Yeah.
250 square feet.
Okay.
Sorry.
Roger.
And I second it.
It's been moved by Mr. Holman and seconded by Ms. Jenkins to approve a variance from the requirement on room size. Taking the vote, Mr. Abbott,
Approved.
Mr. Nugent.
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman.
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins.
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
Continuing on with case 31-2024-Z-V, move to approve a variance to allow rooming house as defined in section 1304.02-7.17 at 835 East Princess Street in the RS2 zoning district.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Holman and seconded by Ms. Jenkins to approve the variance to allow a rooming house. Taking the vote, Mr. Abbott.
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Mr. Nugent.
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman.
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins.
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye. And I want to join with the comments. It's a wonderful application, I mean, in preparation. But I have not, for a long time, seen a case where the physical property, the people involved, and the need came together more beautifully. And I'm pleased to finally get to meet you in a way, and your husband. Thank you both.
Good luck and God bless you.
Thank you.
Man, I've been wanting to see something like that. I've been wanting to see something like that for a long time. Next, we need a men's.
The next case is case number 32-2024-Z-V/SE. The applicant is Statewide Partners LLC of 3405 North 6th Street in Harrisburg. The owner of the subject property is Garden Foods Incorporated and CS Madison LLC of 2505 Anthem Village Drive in Henderson, Nevada. The subject property is located at 601 Madison Avenue, which address is located in the RS2 Single Family Attached Residential Conservation District of the City of York. The applicant seeks 5 variances and a special exception to permit a multifamily dwelling conversion from a different use. In addition to the requested special exception, applicant also seeks variances related to the general criteria for multifamily dwelling conversion from a different use: maximum building height, maximum density, off-street parking, and interior parking. I know that the applicant here tonight is represented, and I will allow them to go through in more detail the variances sought. The application was reviewed by the planning staff of the City of York. The planning staff recommends denial of all requested variances and denial of the requested special exception.
Andy,
Case,
just let you know, it's 7 variances and 1 use one. You said 5.
perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
7 variances, not 5.
Thank you,
The
sir.
application was reviewed by the planning staff of the City of York. The case was heard by the City of York Planning Commission on November 11th, 2024. The Planning Commission recommended approval of all requested variances and the requested special exception. Some of those recommendations, I believe, were unanimous and some were by majority vote. The record before the board this evening consists of the application itself, an October 3rd, 2024 letter from Zoning Officer McMillian, an 11-page narrative, and a plan by Site Design Concept.
Thank you. Ms. McNeil.
Good evening, if I may, Friday, so I think we can do the Uber a little bit so the stenographer can see the blocks. There you go, right here. Good evening, Stacy McNeil, I represent the applicant, and just to give you a little preview of our case this evening to help organize what obviously seems to be like going to be a lot of information. We do have multiple witnesses this evening. Adam Anderson from Site Design Concepts will be here to talk about the technical site situation, the existing conditions, as well as the proposed plan. Mr. Christopher Schwab from TRG is going to be here to talk about traffic and parking. And then we have representatives from the applicant, Ryan McKinley and Josh Duffy, who are available. And Mr. McKinley in particular will speak a little bit more to their proposed project and redevelopment of the site. We can talk about maybe some of the operational issues related to parking and those types of things. As was mentioned, we are requesting a special exception for multifamily conversion from a different use, which is, again, a special exception in the RS2 zoning district. And we do have a number of variances, but they can really be grouped in a couple of different categories. So we really have 3 variances that we are requesting that are related to demolition of an existing addition to this old school, which you'll hear a little bit more about from our witnesses, and to then build a new complementary addition to the school in place of that existing really old gymnasium building. So we have 3 variances that are related to that. That's the building height, and the 2 that deal with structural alterations to the existing building. We are requesting a variance from density and a variance to reduce the parking from 1.5 spaces per unit to 1.23 spaces per unit. And then we are also requesting 2 parking lot design variances, which Mr. Anderson will be able to explain in further detail. You each have in front of you a packet of exhibits that we'll be referencing this evening. Really mostly just kind of some photographs, some additional plans and materials. And we have up here really for view of the audience, the proposed project plan as well. So I will ask Mr. Anderson to come up. And if you could just give your name and business address for the record, please.
Sure, yeah. Adam Anderson with Site Design Concepts. My address is 127 West Market Street.
And can you just give us a little bit about your professional background?
Sure, I'm a professional engineer out of Pennsylvania. I've been at this business for about 17 years.
And what is your relationship to the project?
Site Design Concepts, we're the civil engineer on the project.
And where is this subject property located?
601 Madison Avenue.
I'm going to draw your attention to what we've marked as applicant's exhibit 1. This is just an aerial photograph of this portion of the city. Can you first of all just generally describe where this property is located in the city?
Sure, it's in the northwest corner. It's at the corner of Madison Avenue and Northwest Street.
And what zoning district is this located in?
The RS2.
Can you just generally describe this neighborhood of the city for me?
It's a mixture of single-family attached dwellings. I see that we have detached, looks like garages along the alleys in the back there, and then businesses and a church.
And are some of these single-family attached dwellings that we see, have some of those been converted over time into 2 or 3 unit buildings?
Yeah, it appears that way, yes.
And you mentioned that most of these single-family structures appear to have either a garage or a parking pad at the rear on the alley.
Correct. Yep.
So this is a neighborhood that's set up for primary streets where the dwelling units front on the primary street with service alleys in between. Showing you what I've marked as applicant's exhibit 3, we'll skip over applicant's exhibit 2 for now. This is the tax map of this parcel, and does this generally accurately represent the existing physical condition from an aerial standpoint of this property?
Yes.
And can you just generally, very high level, describe this property, please?
Yes. So it's almost an acre of land. We have one existing large structure, and then majority of it is paid parking. It's not building.
And do you know anything about the history of this structure?
So the school building itself was, what we think was constructed around 1914.
So let's pause for a second, because I don't know that we actually identified it as a school yet. So the building that we see on this site, then it is an old school building?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said it was built in approximately 1914?
Right.
What else do you know
we know that it was used for a private charter school around the early 2000s, but since, probably the last 10 years, it's been sitting vacant.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what I've marked as applicant's exhibit 4. Is that a current accurate representation of this structure from Madison Avenue?
Yes.
And can you just generally describe what we're seeing here in this photograph?
Sure, so standing on Madison Avenue, looking at the building, on the right-hand side, the taller structure is what would be the school building. And then on the left-hand side is an addition, was a gymnasium.
Do you know anything about the condition of these buildings?
They appear to have been neglected. The gymnasium is definitely in a poor state of repair.
And I believe Mr. McKinley will be able to offer us additional testimony about the specifics of the condition of the building. Moving on to applicant's exhibit 5, and this is our existing conditions plan. Can you explain to the board what is an existing conditions plan?
So it's basically a survey of the property as it exists now, showing topography, building structures, parking, right-of-ways, building setbacks.
And so, what are some of the significant features of what we're seeing on this existing conditions plan?
So you can see that we have the location of the building is along the, we'll say the top side of the sheet there, and then the lower half of the sheet is the parking area.
So when you say the top side of the sheet, are you referencing adjacent to West Rockdale Avenue?
Correct, yes, I should probably use street names.
And I mentioned about the fact that this is a neighborhood with primary streets and service alleys. Is West Rockdale Avenue what you would consider a service alley?
I would say yes.
Okay. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So, looking at the sheet, you can see along Madison Avenue, we have, there's a grade change there, about 2 or 3 feet, and there's like a retaining wall and steps due to the topographic difference. The area of the parcel, as I mentioned, was just under an acre, 0.93 acres. We have a shared access on, I'll say, on the south side, onto Madison Avenue, and then access onto West Rockdale Avenue.
So, as you had mentioned, I just want to go back and touch on a few points that you mentioned here. I think if we look along the property, along Madison Avenue, we're going to see in 3 locations, including at the corner of Northwest Street and Madison Avenue, figures that are steps, right? And so you're saying that's going to identify pedestrian stairs that are already existing in those locations?
Yes, yes.
And again, it's because the parking lot in those locations actually sits at a higher elevation than the street.
Correct.
And are there also similarly steps from the property site to Northwest Street?
Yes.
Okay. And again, there are public streets then on 3 sides of this property?
Correct.
Now, if we look, and I apologize, I think you said it's to the south, so the one side that does not have a public street abutting it, is that where this existing shared access is located that you referenced?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the lot width is?
Roughly 225 feet.
This zoning district requires a 5-foot front setback, 10-foot side setback, and 10-foot rear setback. Do you know if the existing structure meets all of those setbacks?
It does. I would say that it's fairly tight to the setback along West Rockdale Avenue, which is 5 feet from the right of way.
Okay, so it sits pretty much right on the West Rockdale Avenue,
does.
5-foot setback.
Correct.
Okay. And the maximum building height in the RS2 zoning district is 35 feet. What is the current building height?
Roughly 44 to 45 feet.
And the maximum lot coverage in the RS2 is 60%. Do you know what the current lot coverage is?
Yes, we've calculated it to be 97%.
And the minimum required open area is then, of course, 40%. Do you know what the current existing open area is?
53%.
And how many parking spaces are on site?
Roughly 32 parking spaces existing.
And do you know anything about the existing size of this structure?
So the existing school, the footprint itself is roughly 7,375 square feet. The total building square footage is about 25,000 square feet. And then what we measured the gymnasium to be is 5,222 square feet.
I think we're going, Mr. McKinley, again, is going to have a little bit more information for the board on the actual overall square footage of the building, and has maybe some more precise numbers on that. But you understand that the existing overall square footage of the building exceeds 25,000 square feet?
Yes.
Moving on to what we've marked as applicant's exhibit 6. And is this a plan that was prepared by Site Design Concepts?
Yes, it was.
And can you generally describe for me what we are seeing on this plan?
You can see, so the existing building to remain is, it has the hatch around the outside, it's white. There is a proposed addition shown on, say, like an orange color, you can see it there. The green area or the proposed pervious areas would be shown in green, and we have additional access drives shown on that plan.
So backing up again and hitting on a little bit, some more of these points, you mentioned that the orange is a proposed addition. So is it your understanding the intention is to demolish the existing gymnasium and build this new addition in its place?
It is, yes.
And is the footprint of this new addition the same size, larger, or smaller than the gymnasium?
Small.
You mentioned that what we see is green, which is along Northwest Street and Madison Avenue, as well as adjacent to the building, is pervious area. Does that mean green landscaped area?
Yes, green area.
Okay. And is that some of that green area that's going to be added to the site that is not currently existing?
Correct, it's impervious area right now.
And can you describe in a little bit more detail what the intention is in terms of modification of access to the site?
So, the access drive, so as I mentioned, there's a shared access on the Madison Avenue. So we're proposing it's standalone entrance, you can see at the bottom of the page there, and then a one-way out onto West Rockdale Avenue.
And will this provide for better internal circulation for vehicles and in particular for emergency vehicles?
Yes.
And because of the, basically the relocation of this addition, the change in the access and just in general, change to the design of the existing parking area, has the number of parking spaces increased from the 32 that are existing?
They have, yes.
How many parking spaces are proposed?
53.
So will this new addition meet all of the setbacks that are required in the RS2 zoning district?
Yes, it will.
And will it actually be set back further from West Rockdale Avenue than the current building?
It is, yes, all set.
Will the proposed lot coverage be less than 60%?
No,
No. Will the proposed lot coverage be less than 97%, which is the current lot coverage?
yes, we calculated to be 93%.
And will there be an increase in open space on this site from 3% to 7%?
Yes.
Do you know how many units are proposed?
43.
And is that a maximum of 43 units?
It is maximum 43 units.
Do you have any information from the applicant regarding the breakdown in terms of what types of units? You know, efficiencies, one bedrooms, et cetera?
Yeah, so we understand there's going to be 32 one-bedroom units and 11 two-bedroom units.
And is it your understanding that all of these proposed dwelling units will meet the minimum habitable square footage required under the ordinance, which is 550 square feet for one bedrooms and 700 square feet for two bedrooms?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And the applicant will have additional information on that?
Yes.
Okay. I want to turn your attention to applicant's exhibit 7, which is a colored rendering of the project, and talk to you a little bit more about the proposed addition. So So to the left of this rendering, if we were looking at the current photograph, that's where the gymnasium's located. Is that correct?
Correct.
And what we see here is this complementary addition instead of the metal gymnasium. What is your understanding about the building height of this addition?
So it'll be similar to the, I'll say the school building that's remaining.
Okay. And so, the design of this, again, is meant to be complementary to and matching essentially the existing school building as opposed to that metal structure that's currently there.
Correct.
And I think you noticed previously that there are 3 public streets adjacent to this lot, is that right?
Yes.
Could this demolition occur in any way that would not be visible to the public street?
No, and that's 3 public street on 3 sides of it.
So the structural alteration, which is the demolition of the gymnasium, followed by then the construction of this addition, there would be no way to make that change that it would not be visible to the public street.
Correct, yes.
And again, do you understand from the applicant why they're proposing to demolish the gymnasium?
Yes, the gymnasium is in disrepair and, yeah, it's dilapidated.
And would you say it just doesn't match the existing school structure from an aesthetic standpoint as well?
I would agree with that, the metal siding.
Now, there is, the applicant is requesting also a variance from the amount of parking. The ordinance actually requires 1.5 parking spaces per unit. Do you know what the ratio is that is actually being proposed?
Yeah, so it's 53 parking spaces, and that will be at 1.23 spaces per unit.
Okay, so a reduction from 1.5 to 1.23? How many spaces per proposed bedroom is that?
That is 1 space per bedroom.
Is it maybe just one short of that? So 54 bedrooms and 53 spaces?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're one short.
Okay, but approximately one space per bedroom.
Correct, correct.
Okay. Now, the applicant will have further testimony, and we have Mr. Schwab here to testify as well regarding parking. But you'll understand that there's been some concerns expressed from the neighborhood related to a lack of parking in the neighborhood.
Yes, we've heard that.
Excuse me for 1 second.
Uh-oh. Oh, no,
Yes.
it is on. There it is, I think it is now.
Got it?
Is it good?
Can you check?
Is it good?
Sounds better.
Yeah, it does sound better. Okay. Okay, good timing. So you're aware that there's been some concerns about parking?
Yes.
And again, the applicant, and you're going to hear from the applicant and its expert this evening, that they are confident that the 1.23 parking spaces is going to be more than adequate for parking for this use. But we did want to address the concerns about the amount of parking that's available on the streets in this neighborhood. And to that end, has Site Design Concepts conducted a study and counts of the amount of parking that is occurring on the streets in this area?
We did, yes.
I'm going to turn your attention to what I've marked as applicant's Exhibit 8. Now, can you, before we get into detail on this, can you tell me what it was that Site Design Concepts did in terms of counting available parking and counting, you know, how many cars were parked?
Yep, so we went on site, we looked at a one-block area around the site, measured available area for parking, number of vehicles, and then, you know, the city defines a parallel parking space as 20 feet, so we looked for areas of 20 feet and identified that as an available parking space.
So in terms of the area that you looked at, and I'm going to turn to the second page of applicant's Exhibit 8, which is an aerial photograph with some different colors on it. Can you describe to me, is this the area that you did your parking counts?
It is, yes.
Okay, can you explain to me where these different areas are?
Yeah, sure. So Area 1 was along Madison Avenue. Area 2 was along West North Street. There's Area 3 here. Okay, so that's a little further away. It's a block away from the site along Madison Avenue. Area 4, also along Madison Avenue. 5, that street.
I think it's Belvedere?
Belvedere, okay, there we go. And then 6 is on the top there. Was that Pennsylvania Avenue?
Okay. And when did you conduct these counts?
So we conducted, I guess I'll call it 4 different times where we conducted counts. I'll just run through them.
Yep.
Okay, so the first was on Thursday, the 14th. It was at 7 p.m. We picked that time because of a AA meeting happening next door, so we understood that would be a potential problem time. Friday, the 15th at 6:30 a.m., so that's before everybody would leave for work. And again, on Sunday, the 17th at 8 a.m., so, you know, first thing in the morning on a weekend, and then Sunday, the 17th at 10:15 when church service begins.
Okay. And I think we should have identified that if I go back and look at applicant's Exhibit 1, which is our aerial photograph, you understand that the neighboring property owner there within that existing block is a church?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the church I was speaking to here.
Okay. So why don't you walk us through this parking survey then and describe for us what you found with your parking counts at these various times in the evening, early morning, and on the weekend?
Yeah, so you can see in this breakdown, like I'd mentioned, we have Thursday, Friday, and then 2 Sunday readings. Taken at the different areas, as I mentioned, a total length, number of vehicles, and then 20 foot would be a parking space. So what we identified on Thursday, we thought, we identified 61 open spaces, and that's, you know, not directly at the building or at the site. That's within a 1-block area.
So, for example, if I look here, you say open parking spaces in Area 1. So if we look at that map, Area 1 here, at 7 p.m. on Thursday, November 14th, there were 9 open parking spaces within that area.
Correct.
Okay. And so then you've totaled up each of those 6 areas that we identify here on this map and have identified at Thursday evening over 60 available spaces in on-street parking.
Correct.
Okay. Let's continue on then. What did you discover at Friday at 6:30 a.m.?
Okay, so Friday, same methodology. You can see in Area 1, 11 spaces available. And then if we tally everything up, we're at 65 available spaces Friday in the morning.
What about Sunday at 8 a.m.?
So Sunday at 8 a.m. had the least amount of available spaces. That was about 48 spaces.
And Sunday at 10:15 a.m.?
So there were actually more spaces available, and there were 66 at that point in time.
Okay. Do you have any reason to believe that the parking at the times that you were out there, that anything unusual was going on that would have made those counts not an accurate representation of the available parking in the neighborhood?
Not that we were aware of.
Okay. Then moving on from the parking, again, understanding that Mr. Schwab and Mr. McKinley will speak more to the actual needs of parking of the project, I want to move on from that and ask you, we talked about some dimensional requirements. will this building meet all the other kind of dimensional requirements of the ordinance in terms of meeting setbacks and things like that?
Yep, building setbacks, the existing nonconformities.
And if zoning relief were to be granted, would the project be moving forward with a land development plan?
It would, yes.
Okay. Do you know whether the proposed traffic that would be generated from this project would be equal to or less than the last use of the property?
So I believe it's less than what was there before.
And again, Mr. Schwab will testify to this in greater detail, but have you seen communication from TRG to that effect?
Yes, I've reviewed the letter.
Okay. Is there public water and sewer available to the property?
It is, yes.
Do you foresee any issues with adequate water and sewer capacity?
No,
Do you believe the sewer and water infrastructure would need to be upgraded for this project?
yes, yep.
What upgrades are you envisioning related to water and sewer for the project?
Sure, so the water meter pit and probably fire suppression for the building. And then sewer, we just have to get in there and figure out what the condition of that sewer lateral would be and size.
Are you anticipating any changes to the site that would result in increased or changed stormwater from the project?
Stormwater would be improved because the impervious area is being decreased.
Okay. Is the property located within the floodplain?
No,
Do you see any concern with any other public services being provided to this project?
no,
And have you located an area, for example, for a trash dumpster on the site?
we have, yes.
And during land development plan, there will be turning templates and things like that that will be provided to staff to show how a trash truck can maneuver through the site.
Correct.
And again, we'll be able to show how emergency services vehicles can maneuver through the site.
Correct.
In your professional opinion, is the project suitable and compatible for this proposed site?
I believe so, yes.
Does it have adequate accessibility?
Yes.
Are you aware of any negative impacts on public safety or the neighborhood in general?
No.
Now, we're requesting 2 variances from parking lot design. Can you please describe what those 2 requested variances are?
Sure. So the first one would be a requirement to provide interior landscape or interior green space of the parking lot. What we're trying to do is maintain thoroughfare for emergency vehicles, pedestrian walkways, and then also increase as much off-street parking as we can on this site.
So are you instead now placing green space adjacent to the building in kind of one area as opposed to interspersed throughout the parking lot?
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put that. It's around the perimeter rather than interior of the parking.
And what is the second variance that's being requested related to the parking?
Yeah, so the second variance is for not, so technically, vehicles are not permitted to back into the street right away. So if you look, we have 6 parking spaces proposed along West Rockdale Avenue that will back into that right of way, which is similar to almost every other property on that street.
Yes, so if I look at applicant's Exhibit 3 and look at West Rockdale, do I see there, similar to what you're describing, that most of the residential properties on the other side of West Rockdale, many of them appear to have parking spaces that would do exactly what we're discussing here, which is back out onto West Rockdale?
Yes, correct.
And the church next door also has parking spaces similar to what's being proposed that would back onto West Rockdale?
They do, yes.
So do you believe that this design would be consistent with the neighborhood and this service alley?
It would be, yes.
Okay. Do you believe that these variances that are being requested are necessary due to existing hardship created by the physical condition of the property?
Yes.
And do you believe that these variances are necessary to allow reasonable redevelopment of the property?
I do, yes.
And do you believe if these variances are granted that will have any negative impact on the neighborhood?
No.
Okay, we talked about West Rockdale. Do you believe that this hardship was self-created in any way?
No.
And do you believe these are the minimum variances that will offer relief?
Yes, I do.
Is there anything else that you would like to add for the board?
So I guess there was a comment about snow removal on the site. Talking with the team here, snow would be pushed to the perimeter of the site. Like I mentioned, we have some green space around the perimeter. Now, if we get a large snow event, we may lose some parking spaces temporarily, but it's the applicant's typical, what they would do is bring in a loader and a truck to truck that off.
That concludes my questions for Mr. Anderson. As I referenced, I do have Mr. Schwab and Mr. McKinley to offer testimony as well. So I leave it to the discretion of the board if you would like to ask Mr. Anderson questions at this point or wait until you've heard from all three witnesses.
We'll wait till we hear all three.
Yeah, just wait.
We'll just wait till we hear all three.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Schwab.
Yes.
Please give,
I'm sorry, can you spell your last name
Yes. Schwab, S-C-H-W-A-B.
and your first name?
Christopher?
Thank you.
and can you give your business address?
Yes, work at Transportation Resource Group at 2 East Market Street in York.
And what is your professional background?
I'm a registered professional engineer, and I've worked at TRG for 26 years.
And in your position at TRG, do you focus your engineering skills in any area in particular? At TRG, I'm sure it's structural engineering, right? No.
TRG does transportation, traffic impact studies, parking studies, signal design work.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what we've marked as applicant's Exhibit 10, which is a letter from TRG. Are you familiar? I'm sorry, not 10, 9, applicant's Exhibit 9. Are you familiar with this letter?
Yes.
And is this letter that the applicant requested TRG to evaluate traffic and parking as related to this project and prepare this letter for tonight's hearing?
Yes.
Now, one of the special exception requirements in the city's ordinance for multifamily conversion from a different use in the RS2 zoning district is that we need to show that the traffic being generated would be equal to or less than that of the prior use of the property. Do you understand that's one of those requirements of the ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, and was this letter drafted in part to address and study that issue?
It was.
How do you go about preparing something like that, an assessment like that?
So what we did is we used Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual. We used that to estimate the number of trips for the proposed apartments, and we used it to estimate the number of trips for the previous charter school. And then we did a comparison to see if there would be greater or less traffic with the apartments versus the charter school.
Now, I think you heard Mr. Anderson testify that his understanding is that this school has been vacant or has been gone from the site for probably at least 10 years. Is there any, are you aware of any sort of documentation that actually tells us what their traffic generation was when they were in that property?
No, we don't have any physical counts from that time.
So how do you go about recreating what you anticipate the traffic would have been for that type of use?
We would use the trip generation manual to determine what a charter school would generate. We assumed a 50-student charter school for this site.
And do you believe that that number of 50 students is a conservative number given the size of the structure?
We do. It's our understanding there were 8 to 10 classrooms inside, so 50 students would probably be a conservative estimate.
Okay. So moving to page 2 of your correspondence here, do we see in this, we'll focus on this chart in the middle of the page. I think the second line here, we see charter school, 50 student capacity. is this the information that you got from the ITE manual regarding that prior use?
Yes.
Can you explain to us what this means?
Okay, so for the charter school, IT has a variety of uses, pretty much any land use that you could imagine, from apartments to commercial to schools. And there are studies that, like we talked about, there were no actual traffic counts here, but when we do studies and we do traffic counts, that everything gets submitted to ITE, and then they use those actual numbers to develop rates for schools. So we know that a rate for a charter school for 50 students would be 42 trips during the AM peak hour, so between 7 and 8 per se. And then during the PM peak hour, it'd be 36 trips for a charter school of this size.
Okay. And then did you also have to come up with some proposed trip generation for this multifamily project?
Yes, and we did the same thing where we used Land Use Code 220, which is multifamily housing, low-rise apartments, meaning 3 stories or less. And we determined that would be 17 AM trips and 22 PM trips.
So let me ask you about this. You mentioned that code 220 that we see here is multifamily, low-rise housing, 3 stories or less. As compared to what other types of housing codes, what are some other examples that the ITE would have?
So they have single-family detached, they have, the multifamily's been changed to now it's multifamily low-rise, which is 3 or less, multifamily mid-rise or multifamily high-rise. So that includes like apartments and townhouse units where you have common walls and things like that. So that's, the multifamily low-rise is the most conservative as terms of trip generation, meaning the most.
Meaning that if you use, now this obviously isn't a multifamily mid-rise because it's not more than 3
Correct.
stories, but if you use that classification incorrectly, it would further reduce the number of trips from
That's
the
correct,
site.
yes.
Okay. Okay, so given those numbers, were you able to reach a conclusion as to whether this proposed use would generate equal or less traffic than the prior use of the structure?
Yes, based on our calculations provided, it would generate less traffic than the previous school.
And have you also had an opportunity to conduct a parking analysis of the needs for this proposed use?
We did.
And explain to us a little bit, and that starts really about 2/3 of the way down this page of your study. Explain to us a little bit about how you go about conducting a parking analysis like that.
Okay, so similar to the IT trip generation, IT also has a parking manual where traffic counts are done at actual locations, submitted to IT, it's all compiled, and then you come up with an average rate for a size apartments or, commercial, whatever the use would be. In this case, it's going to be for the apartments.
And so did you again find a similar classification for these apartments based on what their classifications are in the ITE parking manual?
Yes, IT parking manual and IT trip generation use the same land use code. So we
Okay.
used multifamily housing 220.
And how does the ITE determine how much parking you're going to need? Is it based on number of dwelling units? Is it based on the size of your building? How do they make you do that calculation?
Yeah, so it's different for all different land uses, but for apartments, we do it based on the number of units in the apartments. So, and then that's even further broken down to 1-bedroom unit apartments or 2-bedroom unit apartments.
So how many parking spaces does the ITE determine you need to have for each 1-bedroom unit?
Based on IT, it's 0.93 parking spaces per unit.
And how many parking spaces do you need for each 2-bedroom unit?
1.27 parking spaces per unit.
So using the ITE calculation, how many parking spaces would be required?
44.
Which is obviously less than the 53 parking spaces being provided.
Yes.
Based on this study and based on what you've seen with the plan and know of the project, do you believe that there is adequate parking on site for this proposed use at 1.23 parking spaces per unit?
Yes.
And let me ask you, because we get this question a lot about these parking studies. When we talk about these number of units, let's say 1.27 parking spaces for every 2-bedroom units, does that mean that they expect that the tenants themselves, there will be 1.27 kind of cars on average per unit?
No, not necessarily.
Okay, so can you explain a little
Yes.
bit more about how that works and what that means?
Okay, so similar to what Site Design did when they went out and did their traffic counts, and they just went out at certain times of the day, and they conducted counts, and then figured out how many spaces there were. That's exactly what they do for ITE. So, say 7 in the morning, you go out and you count the number of spaces, or number of cars parked in an apartment complex, and then you would divide that by the number of units, and that's literally how you come up with the rate. So there's no way for someone conducting that count to know if those were residents, visitors, somebody who just parked in there. So that's why you do it, and you get those averages. So there's no differentiation of who that is at the time. So that does not mean the residents will have 1.27 cars on average per unit. It means that's what you'd expect at the peak time.
So these 44 spaces that the ITE says is needed encompasses tenants, visitors, the landlord who might be on site inspecting, the random person who might just be parking there illegally. It encompasses all of those people.
Correct.
Now, you mentioned the site design study, and you heard the times of day and the different days that they conducted their study. Do you believe, in your professional opinion, that those are appropriate, accurate times to conduct counts in a residential neighborhood?
Yes.
And why is that?
And just like Adam spoke to, that early in the morning, that's when most people are there before they leave. Or you do it later in the evening when people have come home. And I think you even saw that on the Sunday, early in the morning, there were less spaces available than at 10:30, even though intuitively you'd think, well, church is there, there'd be more, but people go out and head out. So that's when we do them, is the peak times. The peak times meaning the earlier in the morning or later at night.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to offer to the board this evening?
No.
Okay. Then with the board's indulgence, I will move on to our final witness, Mr. McKinley. Could you please state your name, spell your name, give your business address?
Ryan McKinley, 3405 North 6th Street, Harrisburg.
And what's your position with the applicant?
I'm the president of Statewide Partners. I handle the development for the investors.
Okay. And just generally describe your vision for the redevelopment of this site.
I think what we wanted to do is provide something that was complementary to the area, doing 43 market rate apartments in an area where there's currently apartment conversions and single-family dwellings and row homes. Seemed like it was complementary.
And what are some of the challenges to the redevelopment of this property? I mean, it's been vacant for 10-plus years. I'm assuming there are some challenges.
Yeah, there's lots of challenges, condition of the building being one of them. Fortunately, the main building that we want to preserve has a decent roof on it, and other than many outdated mechanicals and things that need to be replaced, the structure is intact, unlike the building next to it, the gymnasium, which we've heard testimony on, has some challenges. It needs to be replaced. I'm not a structural engineer, but there's things that are falling down and floors is falling through. It definitely needs replaced.
And I think you had shared with me, there is currently no power to the building, correct?
Correct. There's no power.
And so if you walk into the gymnasium to try to take pictures, to show the board how bad it is, there is no light in there right now.
No, it's pitch black. It's a fortress.
Okay. So we would very much have liked to have shown you pictures of the gymnasium, but unfortunately, that really wasn't very feasible. So extensive renovations are going to be necessary to this property.
That is correct.
Now, you heard some discussions about size of the existing structures. So what we'll call the existing old school building, not the gymnasium, is about how many square feet?
It's approximately 7,000 square feet.
No, the overall.
Oh, the overall.
Floor area, sorry.
It's, with the basement, I think you're somewhere around 26,000, 27,000 square feet.
And with the addition, about how many square feet will this building be?
The addition that we're proposing is 4,950 square feet of floor, so it's approximately 15,000 square feet
So
for 3 floors.
So with replacing the gymnasium with this attractive addition that you're proposing, you're going to have about a building with about 44,000 square feet.
That's correct.
Right. And so 43 units in a 44,000 square foot building seems pretty feasible.
Yes.
And there was some testimony about the size of these proposed units, and obviously they will all at least meet that minimum habitable square footage.
Yes, we will meet the ordinance
Okay.
or exceed it.
Now, it's mentioned that this property has been vacant for over 2 years, correct?
That's correct.
And do you have a letter in support of the project from the redevelopment authority?
Yes, we received a letter from the redevelopment authority from Mr. Nace.
And that's applicant's exhibit 10?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more, and I'm going to grab this photo here.
Sure.
Can you spell your last name?
McKinley, McKinley.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think this is applicant's exhibit 7 for the board members, the rendering.
Yeah.
So again, we can see on the left-hand side here, the proposed replacement for that gymnasium. Can you just give a little bit of sense, like what's your sense behind the architecture of that and why it kind of looks the way you're proposing it on this rendering?
Yeah, anytime you do a renovation of an older building like this, most HARB districts, even though this isn't in the HARB district, they like to see additions to an older building like this not match the building. They always like you to place something that complements it from aesthetic standpoint, but they don't like you to match the architectural features. So that's kind of what we're proposing, to keep the same height. It's actually a little smaller than the gym footprint, I think about 300 square feet, and it's pushed forward just a little bit. And that addition will be at grade level, whereas the building currently is a couple steps up to get to the first floor. So, because we will be required to have accessible units, they'll be in the newer addition where we can have those units at grade level where they can meet the requirements.
So obviously, as we can see from the old school building, you have, as you mentioned, you have to go up or downstairs when you go in to get into any of the floor area of that building.
Yeah, the older structures, they just weren't, constructed to meet today's ADA codes. And therefore, they also propose challenges. But with the addition, we are able to, take care of those challenges.
And provide those required ADA accessible units.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Want to talk a little bit about the density of the project. You are requesting a variance from density to have a maximum of 43 units, and that is a maximum number?
That is correct. We will finalize architecturals once we get all of our approvals. We don't typically go through all of that until we know that we can proceed.
And why do you think that's an appropriate maximum number of units for this project?
Just initial size of the building, as you mentioned, was 44,000 square feet. Even if you divide that by 43, that's a little over 1,000 square feet per unit. And obviously, you have common space in there, allowable use for common space. So when we do our math, I have over 20 years of doing this, so I have some history that I can pull from, and that's kind of where our numbers came out.
Yeah. Now that ties into, though, you have parking on site for 53 spaces, which is a good bit more than what's currently on site, but doesn't meet the ordinance requirement. You're a little short. Does Statewide Partners own any other similar properties?
We do. We have 105 units in North York Borough in a similar neighborhood setting, and we are operating 105 units with 1.2 parking without any issues. I'm not an engineer, but I have the real-life experience of operating these. And what we notice is people don't all work at the same time. They all have jobs at different times. They have family requirements at different times. And therefore, we have not, in the years that I've been there, had any issues with a 1.2 parking in these higher densities. We found that there's more than enough spaces in those times.
And and that's a similar type of apartment?
Yes.
So 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartments, not looking at 3-bedroom townhouses, obviously,
No.
or that sort of thing?
They're all 1s and 2s. The other thing, as an operator, we can control parking, unlike neighborhoods can. You know, we do control parking by giving out passes. We know the vehicles and the license plates of all of our tenants. We have all of our parking lots monitored. So if people aren't supposed to be parking there, they will get towed. If people are abusing parking, you know, we can take care of that and rectify that issue.
And if, for example, neighbors were to express a concern that they felt that even though maybe there were spaces available on your site, that you had tenants parking on the street, would you have some ability to regulate that?
Yes, certainly. Unlike a neighborhood, they can't really regulate their neighbors. These are our tenants, and you know, we can regulate them through our rules and regulations in our leases, which are in all of our leases.
Do you believe that this conversion and redevelopment is generally consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and the purpose of this zoning district?
I do.
And looking back at applicant's exhibit 2, which is an excerpt from the zoning district, it indicates the district aims to protect, preserve, enhance, and perpetuate the value of medium to high density residential neighborhoods. You believe this is consistent with that?
I do.
It's intended to protect and strengthen desirable and unique physical features, design characteristics, and recognized identity and neighborhood character. Do you believe that this school that was constructed in 1914 is a unique feature of this neighborhood? Or could be a unique?
Yeah, I think it could be a unique feature of the neighborhood.
Right. And what you're looking to do is obviously, with this project, to enhance and preserve that existing old structure.
Yes, we believe that that will do that.
And also, it's intended to promote and provide for neighborhood revitalization. Do you believe that that's important to this neighborhood, that this property be put to a productive use?
Yes,
Do you believe that your proposed redevelopment is suitable for this particular site?
I do.
And do you believe it would be compatible with the neighborhood?
I do.
Do you believe that there are adequate services available for this redevelopment?
I do.
And do you believe that there is adequate accessibility to the site?
I do.
Is this redevelopment generally in conformance with the municipal ordinances except for the relief that you have specifically requested today?
Yes.
And do you believe this redevelopment would create any traffic congestion or public safety issues?
I do not.
And do you believe this redevelopment will result in overcrowding?
I do not.
Do you believe this redevelopment will have any negative impact of light or air on adjacent nearby properties?
I do not.
Do you believe that this redevelopment will have any negative impact on the neighborhood?
I do not.
As it relates to the multiple variances required for this project, are these variances requested due to a hardship in redeveloping this site?
Yes,
Is that related to various physical conditions of the site?
yes,
And are some of those conditions, for example, the size of the site, the fact that it's fully impervious, it's already improved with this very large white elephant structure, that's got public streets on 3 sides?
yes. I mean, if you weren't trying to preserve the structure, yeah, it would be different, but we are trying to preserve the structure, and I think that's in the best interest of the neighborhood.
And has this hardship been self-created in any way?
No,
And do you believe these variances, if granted, will adversely affect the neighborhood?
no,
And are these the minimum variances that you believe are necessary to allow for redevelopment of this property?
I do.
Do you have anything else to offer to the board?
We have met with some of the neighbors, and I'm sure there's some people here to speak tonight. We did reach out to the community. We know that parking was a concern, which is why we did our due diligence with the engineering staff. I mean, I know I'm operating another place, and it's easy for me to say that. But we wanted to make sure that we were thorough in our investigation. All of our properties were family-owned. We build and operate, and we also don't want to create problems for ourselves. So we do a thorough job of our engineering and also Ms. McNeil here, of looking at everything before we do a project. So we hope you consider the efforts that we put in to be a good neighbor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further questions for the witnesses, but we welcome questions from the board and the audience.
I'd be interested to hear from neighbors.
Step to the podium, please.
Sitting a long while here. My name is Charles Backus. I live at 663 Madison Avenue, and I have lived there since 1975. I well remember the Madison Avenue School when it went through many of its iterations. It was once a Parks and Recreation Park of the city of York, where a box would be delivered and a number of chairs and tables, and kids would use it as a place to do crafts. They were supervised by an instructor. There was a basketball court. And it has been a focal point off and on for the neighborhood. When the charter school ran it, they made it available for public meetings for the neighbors. My wife, Mary Ann, who is a former city council member, and I might add that I am the former chairman of the York City Redevelopment Authority, would run neighborhood Halloween parties in that gymnasium. And so we have lived with the school, and we are, I would like to describe, at least for myself and for the neighbors, I think I represent the majority of the single-family residents, of which there are about probably 10 or 12 of us. On the church and school side, there are only 4 units of housing. And I would say overall, I think we are welcoming of this project, but then I'm going to seriously qualify welcoming with realistically welcoming. For example, we are an alley-serviced side of our street, but I can tell you realistically, there are 8 cars on our side of the street and only 1 parks in the garage. Those garages have been turned into other things. There is an absentee landlord who controls 2 units and does other kinds of storage there. My other neighbors do not park in their garage. They park on the street. They have filled their garages with other kinds of junk. But it's what happens, and it's what's going to be some of the cultural change that people are going to have to go through when they encounter this development. So I think the estimates of parking, and I worked with parking estimates when I was with the Redevelopment Authority, And also when I worked in Harrisburg for the Pennsylvania Department of Community Affairs and did housing. There's no real way that I think we can grasp the reality of the impact of the traffic that's going to hit us. And I think you've got to look either at an accommodation by the city where we're going to actually have to go out on the street and have measured units for parking. You're going to actually have to paint a parking space. So people will realistically use those parking spaces and not allow themselves a generous 3 feet in front and the 3 feet in back. There's a lot of habits we have, and those habits are 10 years of nothing in that building, okay? So there are people who've never seen anything in that building and have never experienced that. So there's just going to be there has to be a realistic view of what is being proposed here when they say they're going to have 2.1 parking spaces on their lot. I am very welcoming of this project. It's an eyesore. Is there going to be an overall improvement to my property value because they're fixing this building? Absolutely. Okay, but are there going to be downsides? Are there real people sitting up there that I'm looking at who know what really happens in neighborhoods when you drop a parking bomb like this on a neighborhood and a traffic bomb? And we've been living with them, and again, we were very welcoming. Only one block over is Linden Apartments. Only another block down is Monarch Mills. So we know what's happened. We've been very supportive of those. But Monarch Mills parks everybody underground. And over on Linden, they have 3 parking spaces, one behind the building, one further behind the building, and then a separate lot above. And I might also add, there's something else that happens when you bring a lot of apartments into a neighborhood. You do bring cars, and you don't just bring a single car per unit. You bring the girlfriend's car. You bring the boyfriend's car. You bring the son who just got discharged from the Army and is going to spend 6 months or 2 years trying to figure out where he's going to live. And it's not a car. It's a Ford F-150, okay? So we've got to think about those kinds of things, too. So I think that some of what's been talked about here is not in the realm of being realistic. It's in the realm of being absolutely as useful, getting the maximum out of this property that they can possibly get. And I think some of that's going to have to be shaved off. I don't know if that forces them to go back to the bank again or not. I'm not sure. But speaking from the neighbor's perspective, I think we will be coming to this board and then possibly to the city council to see some accommodations that bring this more into the realm of being realistic to what's about to happen. Again, I say welcoming, but realistically welcoming of this project. I'll summarize it at that and let it go. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Soliday. I own the properties at 124 and 128 West Market Street.
Can you spell your last name?
Sallade. I'm the owner of Charles Schaefer Flower Shop. I grew up at the end of Texas Avenue. I grew up at the end of Texas Avenue. My parents had lived there for 70 years. I went to school at Madison in the 60s. There are 8 classrooms. They brought up the amount of parking spaces per the amount of teachers. We had 200 kids in that school. It was 25 kids per room. Do the math. The other thing was, back then, they had a teacher per classroom. You have 8 classrooms. You have a custodian. We did not have a cafeteria. We walked home for lunch. Okay? There wasn't 42 cars. I'm all in favor of this project because the school itself, and I went through it in 2019 before COVID, the school is a disaster. Those gentlemen are right. The building next to it, that's the gym, needs to be gone. 43 units, no way. First of all, Madison Avenue has been a thoroughfare for traffic forever. Everybody who comes in Carlisle Avenue and they take a shortcut, where are they taking it? They're either taking it on Pennsylvania, they're taking it on Maryland or Madison Avenue. Last year, my father's health started to deteriorate. I went to his house every day. I went out that way. I was out there the other day, West Street, 2:30 in the afternoon, one parking space between Madison and Pennsylvania Avenue. All the houses in those neighborhoods, or a lot of them, where Mr. Backus lives, and I've known Mr. Backus for years, have become multi-unit homes. When I grew up, they were single-family homes. By the way, when I grew up, everybody was lucky to have one car. Okay? I am not opposed to this. 43 units. One of my other concerns, you're going to take away public parking on the main street to have an egress into this place. And you're going to dump everybody into an alley to get out of it. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else?
I'd like to add a footnote. I don't know what the requirements of this building are going to be, but it may allow pets. I'd like to talk about pets briefly. Almost all of us have front lawns. Across the street from me are a number of rental units. There's one particular woman I watch every morning as she takes her dog across the street onto the church lawn to do its business and leaves it sitting there. So if we're going to face a lot of dogs that are coming out for a quick walk before people go to work, we've all got front lawns. So that's another thing you want to think about again, about being realistically welcoming. Thank you.
Just to cover what he just said, are you thinking about if pets will be allowed in these buildings, in your lease?
We currently allow pets in the building. One of the reasons that we're showing added green space in front of the building is because we know you're going to have pets there.
And if I may, just two quick points I'd like to make in response to the neighbors' comments, which we understand that parking is always a concern, right? And unfortunately, there's just no real way of knowing. We do the best we can to go out, to count, to see what's on the streets, to, based on their experience with similar units, to look at what scientifically, objectively is said about parking. I will note here that the ordinance only requires 1.5 parking spaces per unit. We are only reducing that, or recommending, requesting that that be reduced by a relatively small amount to the 1.23 spaces per unit. And that we, again, we believe that that really is in part supported and appropriate because of the types of units that are being built here. These aren't large, 3-bedroom. We only have 11 2-bedrooms. It's primarily 1-bedroom units. And therefore, again, the reality is that the amount of parking is necessary. We will be going through land development, right? So this board understands that this is just the first step in a very long process for a potential redevelopment of that site. And during land development, we will further look at and work with staff to look at what the parking situation is on streets around here and see what can be done to potentially assist the neighborhood with their existing situation. I mean, we have heard this, and we heard this from neighbors the other night as well, that as you can see, most of them have garages, have parking spaces at the rear of their properties, but either aren't using them or they have multiple units now on those properties, and that's what's driving up their existing street parking needs. there are certainly things that we could discuss with the city staff during our land development about ways to try to help the city with their existing problem that we again firmly do not believe will be exacerbated by this project. But we're willing, as a good neighbor coming in, to take a look at it. We think it's a good opportunity to look at that situation. And on the traffic rather in general, of course, that's something that's going to be thoroughly reviewed during land development. And we will have to go through and present much more information to the city staff, city engineer to talk about traffic at that time. What we just wanted to do here tonight with traffic is show you that based on your actual ordinance provisions, that scientifically we believe that we will be reducing the traffic from the last use of the property. So we do thank you for your consideration. We hope that you look favorably on the redevelopment on this site. And again, I'm still willing to answer any questions that the board might have.
I had a few questions. First off, the one picture there, it's gonna sound kind of strange, but nowhere that I could read talks about who your targeted audience is for your renters. Are you low-income housing? Are you?
I just want to make sure that we're not running afoul of any Fair Housing Act type.
Well, it's just a question because the question is it a luxury? Is it, are you mid-grade somewhere? It's market rate. I'm not sure what market rate actually stands for.
Whatever the market is for the typical 1 and 2 bedroom at the time of completion.
Okay.
Which is the reason we use the term market rate. I mean, today, market rate, I think 1 bedrooms are anywhere between 1,100 and 1,600 for 2 bedrooms.
Okay.
That's probably the range. So that's probably the range that would be if it opened today. So whatever the market is then, I understand you.
I mean, I was just looking at the picture too.
Internal bingo that not everybody shares.
Sure, well, I was looking at the picture and you have a Mercedes and you have a Lexus and you have a.
Oh.
And I'm just like, okay, so maybe
Our renderers take a little, I didn't draw it, but the rendering companies, we actually call out the same things. Hey, you put like Teslas in
Okay.
no charging station.
The second, and it's not really a question, but since you brought it up, I mean, 43 units is a discussion point right now with your organization, because it sounds like you could go, that's the maximum, but you could change it to other units. And I just want to bring this up to everybody here listening. I mean, all of a sudden, there could be a decision where, 11 two-bedroom apartments is not what the number comes up to, and it goes up to 15 because they're making more money or something on that, with that. And that would reduce the number of parking requirements based on the changes of what you're actually proposing to do, based on the square footage and all that. So you could go from, and it's just a proposal, it's just like 15 two-bedrooms and drop it to 28 one-bedrooms or something like that. I think my math might be slightly off, but that would reduce the number of parking requirements for this, 1.5 per apartment.
The apartment percent, it's based on what we typically do, which is about 25% 2 bedrooms and 75% 1 bedroom.
Okay.
In this type of a project in an urban setting, that's what we do. So that's how they came up. We didn't just pick the number out of the sky.
No, I heard what you were saying about it,
You're
yeah.
correct in the sense that 43 is the max that we're going for. Once you go through architectural, depending on what that wrench throws in with codes and things like that, I think the size could only go down. If we thought it could go up, we would be asking for more.
Right.
I mean, we're also asking, because we use the square footages, you could put 500 square foot, apartments in here. We're not trying to, put super tiny, micro apartments in here. We're using the common standard of what the market is, for market rate housing at this point. So I don't think you're gonna see, and we don't typically do, we're building a brand new building, I'm sure you guys are aware, on Beaver Street, the new Northwest Triangle. I have no 3 bedrooms in that one either.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna all of a sudden in this area throw 3 bedroom units in.
And then my last question is, are there apartments, are you utilizing I call it the basement, since I saw new windows be put in there? Is that gonna be apartments in there too?
Yes, there
Okay.
would be garden style
Thank you.
There's a couple of things that we're used to seeing in applications. Normally, even if it's a conversion from a single-family home to two apartments, and I don't know if this is just habit or if it's a requirement, but most applications do include a copy of the deed to prove ownership.
Oh, I apologize, but I was pretty certain that a copy of the deed had been uploaded to the electronic application.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, this new system, and I'll let Nancy or Monty talk to this, but they can upload certain things into the electronic system that don't necessarily then get translated. And that system, if you remember, sometimes would spit out photos that were like thumbnail size photos.
I remember some of that.
So can you guys talk about that?
Because my recollection was, and sure Nancy and Monty will tell me if I'm incorrect, but I thought that we had provided the deed as well as a redacted version of the contract to purchase. So my client is under a contract to purchase the property.
That is
and
correct.
And so that was provided to.
I got it right here.
Zoning officer.
It's also online. I just pulled it up right here too, so it is online, the complimentary deed.
So who is paying taxes on the building right now?
Whoever the.
Garden Foods Incorporated, out of Nevada.
And they're paying taxes on the building?
It took a while to get a hold of them.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, all right.
Is there any sort of interesting story about how a 110-year-old York City elementary school came to be owned by a business, apparently a business in Henderson, Nevada?
Yeah, actually, you want to speak on this?
So the gentleman.
Oh, no, you're
You're
gonna have to get
come
up.
up here.
Here, Josh, and give your name to her again.
My name is Josh Jaffe, Juffe, one of the owners of Statewide. No, like the gentleman who owns this runs a consulting school or a consulting company to do charter schools. So there's an ordinance in the city of York that prohibits a construction of any new charter school unless the last use of the building was a school. So I think he did, what's the charter school over on like West Princeton?
Helen Thaxton?
Yeah, he did Helen Thaxton. So when he went in and constructed that, he saw that this building at that time was vacant, and he bought this thinking, hey, maybe there'll be another opportunity to do a charter school, and he's owned it since. And, you know, this is our third run at trying to engage him. But, you know, I think the last time he made the paper for Blight, and he finally said, all right, I'll see if you guys can have any luck fixing this thing up. So that's like the history. That's why he bought it, because he was going to keep it a school. And now they make it impossible.
So it is under contract, you have it under contract to buy it?
Yes.
And should you guys own it, I'd assume we'd have a much better chance of seeing taxes and such.
Yes, we are. You know, even though our office is in Harrisburg, I mean, Ryan lives in York City, and I live over by the college, but in Spring Garden, so we're local. I drive by this building. I mean, I drive by this building. I don't live in the neighborhood, but I drive by this almost every day, so I've been looking at it for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, and my family used to live on Linden Avenue, and we still own that property. And that's not a pretty building right now. It's not a pretty building to walk by. I'd love to see dogs and people walking by it more often. I agree with the Bacchuses and the neighbors that spoke, and that, you got to be a good neighbor. And I hope that we can trust you guys to be a good neighbor and make good things happen. I have a hard time believing it would be a bad thing to bring more people to the avenues, which is a neighborhood we know and love. So yeah, I'd like to see you guys be able to get to a next step and see what you can do with it.
Thank you.
And I actually walk my dog past that building every day, and I looked at it and kept saying, what could they make of this building? I never thought about apartments. I was thinking, another school, maybe a church, type of thing, or a community center. Never thought about apartments, but I'm just glad that something is going to go in there.
We used to have a firm line between presentation, questions from the audience, comments from the audience, and then ding, we're closed and we deliberate. But that difference, that change has been blurred a little bit to where we tend to mix comments, our deliberation with, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I've been through this in 23 years. I've been through this situation more times than I can remember. It can range from a large old house in disrepair to a small factory building to a large factory building, block long perhaps. The number of apartments proposed can range from 12 or 16 to 90 or 100. And is that, I forget the definition of conundrum. I'm not sure if that's, it's a neighbors quite often are troubled. The neighbors love the idea of something nice being done with the building that's become more or less an eyesore. And then the developer proposing a project, is asking for, and this is like a mid-range. We've had less, we've had bigger, more. And if you're asking for 43 units, 43 apartments, and I expect that some of the neighbors would feel that the less desirable impact would be noticeably less if you were asking for 30 apartments. And we've heard this again and again and again. 30 apartments won't pay the bill, won't do the work that needs to be done. And I get it. I mean, there somehow, so I wondered, was that any consideration given? It seems pretty clear that gymnasium addition, I mean, I can tell from a glance at the photo, it doesn't look, it's not exactly an aesthetic addition to the building. So it's pretty clear that it's to be demolished. Was any consideration given to using that space to, if you, it seems to me that if you didn't replace that addition with a new addition, I'm sure it would look nice. I've got no problem with that, but it would free up space that could be used partly for parking, partly for a patio area. I'm sure there would be a number of nice uses for it, and the number of apartments would be reduced probably to 30 or 32 or so, or 34. And I would think that the cost of doing the project would be reduced also.
I think they need that section for ADA compliance.
I'm sorry?
ADA compliance, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
partly because of the codes. You need to have, the current building that is going to remain is up, I want to say 4 stairs or 5 stairs off the grade level. And it's a challenge to meet today's codes for ADA requirements as one of the options. And I think financially, as you pointed out, once you start building a little addition, the cost, and the cost to rehab the existing building is much higher than almost a newer building. If we were building all new building, we would be able to say firmly, this is the amount of units we're going to have. The reason we're kind of, hey, this is where the max is because once we get the approval, then we're allowed to go to the engineers and we can spend the money to find out what it's going to be. We're just using square footage math at this point and historical factors.
And Mr. Backus asked, but I thought you would confirm, are there any elevators planned for the building?
No, it's a 3-story building, so there will be no elevators. They're required at 4 and more.
So, and again, just to, again, the addition does a couple of things for the project. It does allow us to have those ground floor level ADA compliant units that we can't really get in the existing structure. And it does, the reality is, I mean, these guys would have to tell you, but I would be willing to bet that the cost of renovation of that existing structure are going to equal or exceed the new construction on site. And that's the challenge with, a structure such as this, is that it requires so much work to make it meet codes, to make it usable, that, well, as you said, you've seen this several times, you've seen this frequently, but this is what the applicant reasonably believes will allow the project to be feasible.
And we haven't even mentioned here something that was brought up at the Planning Commission, and that is, now, I don't think from any of its uses that there's underground vats of chemicals or automotive byproducts, but just 110-year-old construction. There probably is asbestos here and there, lead-based paint. I mean, there probably, the overall condition of the actual school building. I mean, is there a lot of, structural repairs that need to be made, or is it mainly cosmetic upgrade?
We haven't done any kind of structural study at this point because you can't really see in there too well. We know that there's going to be some environmental remediation that's consistent with schools of that nature and that from that time period. To what that extent, I mean, it wasn't an industrial use, so we're not expecting any vats or anything like that. I think it's going to be the typical asbestos and lead-based paint. Based on just the looking around that we could with flashlights, I didn't see anything more than that, so.
And while you haven't done a structural assessment yet, you understand that all the mechanical systems, of course, will need to be, I'm assuming electrical, all of that will need to be upgraded and replaced.
Yeah, we already made the assumption that all the mechanicals and electrical and the plumbing is all going to be replaced. Now, like the engineer said, to the street, we'll do the cameras and see what we can use, but probably will need to be replaced all the way out to the street. I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Any other questions? I think everybody who wanted to comment and we appreciate, I've never lived in the Avenues, but 100 years ago, my grandmother came in from the farm near East Berlin with a horse and buggy and delivered milk, butter, home-baked bread, and eggs to customers on Madison Avenue. I was a small kid when I was taken to visit one or two of her surviving customers. So I've never lived on Madison Avenue, but I've had friends who did, and it's one of York's treasures, and there are times, I guess, when you maybe have to give up a little bit of something you'd like to keep in order to save more of what you don't want to lose. I mean, I get it. I do. I feel it. But I think I'm not going to leave tonight feeling that we did the wrong thing if we approve this.
Okay.
Would someone
In the
like to-
case of 32-2024-Z-B-SE for the property at 601 Madison Avenue, I move to approve a dimensional variance for multifamily conversion from a different use found in section 1304.01-1.02.002A4 to include conversion of a school into 43 units for the property at 601 Madison Avenue in the RS2 zoning district.
I'll second that. It's been moved by Ms. Jenkins and seconded by Williams to approve the dimensional variance, dimensional variance for multifamily conversion. Taking the vote, Mr. Abbott?
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Mr. Nugent?
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins?
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
Continuing, I move to approve a variance, the required number of parking spaces as defined in section 1304.01.02.002D.
I would,
That didn't come out.
well, I would recommend that we clarify the number of required parking spaces, so it's a variance to reduce the required number of parking spaces from
65.
1.5 to 1.23.
It's actually, number-wise, it's 65 to 53.
They're gonna be 53? Okay. To permit only 53 parking spaces, I think that would suffice.
Okay, what he said,
Any objection to that?
what he said.
I'll
Is
second.
there a second? I'm like, help me out here.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Jenkins, seconded by Mr. Nugent to approve the variance, reducing the number of parking spaces from a required 65 to 53
Yes.
spaces to be provided. Taking the vote, Mr. Abbott?
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Mr. Nugent?
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins?
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
Moving forward, I move to approve of alteration variances. No structural alteration of the building exterior shall be made except as may be necessary for purposes of safety. For purposes of this subsection, any addition built that is designed to obstruct the intent of this subsection shall be deemed a structural alteration of the building exterior. Structural alteration shall be located on a side of the building not facing a public street at 601 Madison Avenue in the RS2 zoning district as set forth in sections 1301.01-1.02.002, B, 1, and 2.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Ms. Jenkins and seconded by Mr. Nugent to approve alteration variances to the requirement prohibiting structural alterations visible from a public street. Close enough?
Yes.
Taking the vote, Mr. Abbott?
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Mr. Nugent?
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins?
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
Moving forward, I move to approve of a variance for interior landscaping in any parking lot containing 10 or more parking spaces, except a parking garage. 10% of the total area of the parking lot shall be devoted to interior landscaping. Such interior landscaping shall be used at the end of the parking space rows and to break up rows of parking spaces at least every 10 parking spaces. Landscaped areas situated outside of the parking lot, such as peripheral areas and areas surrounding buildings, shall not constitute interior landscaping. Interior landscaping must have clear visibility from 2 feet off the ground to 7 feet off the ground as set forth in section 1309.03. Is that an L or I?
I think it's an L.
L.
And
Okay.
just to clarify, this is a variance to eliminate the requirement of interior landscaping, am I correct?
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
so I think you can just leave it at that.
Okay.
I'll second. You got it.
I'll second that. I hate interior landscaping and parking lots. Taking the vote, it's been moved by Ms. Jenkins and seconded by Williams to approve the variance from the requirement for interior parking lot landscaping. Taking the vote, Mr. Abbott?
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Mr. Nugent?
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins?
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
Moving forward, I move to approve of a variance for dimensional requirements RS2, single-family attached residential conversion district, maximum building height 20 feet, table 1303.10 at 601 Madison Avenue.
And so I think that what you might want to do here is approve the variance to a building height above the maximum 20 feet, but not to exceed 45 feet.
Oh, okay. What he said.
Second.
Was that Adam?
That was me.
Okay.
Me.
It's been moved by Ms. Jenkins and seconded by Mr. Holman to approve a variance limiting the building height
to 45 feet. There we go.
Yeah, not to exceed 45.
Not to exceed 45 feet.
Right. Taking the vote, Mr. Lester.
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Sorry about that. This is a record number of variances, I think. Mr. Nugent.
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman.
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins.
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
And before we get to this one, just to clarify, this is seeking, to eliminate the curbing requirement?
The back-end requirement.
Yeah, for the
It's basi-
parking spaces where they would be backing out onto Rockdale.
Right.
Okay. So,
Well, couldn't we just say variance for parking lot access to streets?
sure,
Yeah, something maybe with the back end.
I think
that's fine.
okay.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Nugent and seconded by me, Williams, to approve the variance for parking lot access, limiting parking lot access to streets. Taking the vote, Mr. Abbott?
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Mr. Nugent?
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins?
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
Moving forward to, I move to approve of a special exception to allow multifamily dwellings conversion from a different use as defined in section 1304.01-1.02.002. As said location.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Jenkins and seconded by Mr. Holman to approve the special exception to allow multifamily dwellings at 601 Madison Avenue. Taking the vote, Mr. Abbott?
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Mr. Nugent?
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins?
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Good luck with your project.
Thanks, this is just the first step.
I know.
Let's take five. Let's take five.
Yep.
Do we have one or two more? Sure.
Oh, but
One.
they're
The last one's-
they're getting easier.
We only have one?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the last one got canceled.
Table.
Christmas came early.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, I guess we're on break.
Oh,
They're taking a break?
Yeah, we just said take a break.
Okay. Yeah. I know what you mean.
Thank you, Sina.
For what?
Thank you
For what?
for moving us into the motions.
Well, that's
Getting
what I'm
us through all
supposed to do.
7 of those.
I'm your wing person.
You got a wing person.
You have to feel for these people who have lived in these neighborhoods for 30, 40, 50 years but the only way to save most of some things good is to be willing to accept a little bit that maybe you can't save it all. You know, the people getting in the lifeboats off the Titanic didn't insist on taking all their furs and jewels along.
Amen, brother.
I'm sure you know the story about the Strausses, and you look at what some other one of the filthy rich, he said, he would not get on a lifeboat until all the women and children learned that they weren't all gonna get on either. And that's Isidore Strauss's wife, I forget her name, she wouldn't get on the lifeboat. She gave her life vest to her maid. She said, I've been with my husband 50-some years, I will stay with him.
Pretty incredible people out
Wow.
there. Yeah. You having fun yet?
Yeah, my back is killing me for some reason.
I don't understand how you do it.
It's magic.
It is. I would not have a chance at doing what you do.
It's like any other skill.
Yeah.
You build it.
Well, okay, then I should say I've been working on patience for 40 years.
Yeah.
It's still a work in progress.
I understand that one. Totally understand that one. Next one probably will go quick.
Yeah. Yes.
He's like, Dan, I'm taking a break. I'm gonna get out of here.
Yep. How many we got on this one? Is this Philadelphia or Princess? Princess.
I think the one that we're not doing is the very last one, so we're doing
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. No, Princess,
Princess.
I think.
So which one got tabled?
I wanna say Philadelphia got tabled.
He's thinking it's Philly.
I got told it was the last one, so it's the 34, so I think we're doing 33.
Did you have a chance to take a look at this one?
Yeah.
Is it straightforward? Not so much.
I had a couple of questions about his, I was thinking they got more pictures, so. The question I had was that the one picture, was pretty rough. And this is what we got.
Oh, yeah.
And I just, there's an eat-in kitchen, eat-in kitchen, eat-in kitchen. There's at least 3 eat-in kitchens. And then when you start looking through the pictures, there's at least 4 kitchens in it. So I'm like,
Yeah.
but he's only wanting 2 places, I think. And I just don't know what's going on here. So we will see. And he gave us more pictures, so us.
We gotta hang on to this number 5, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that one I think is the last one, but we're not gonna do that one. Some witness couldn't come or make it.
Keep that for next time. Yeah, that's one thing I learned the hard way. Well, yeah, and
Did you like my car thing?
if one of the cases is tabled.
The what?
The car thing on the picture, Mercedes and.
Oh, I noticed that too. Yeah.
I was like, okay, so, because it doesn't really associate who's who, where are they trying to go with
Right.
their clientele? And since you're in the Avenues area, it's a nicer area. I mean, it's not 100% great, but it's nicer.
Right.
So I figured, well, maybe they're going for like middle class America, something like that.
No, I noticed the cars too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in a manila folder, like, yeah.
So you just keep them. So do we have to keep these?
So typically, I've got a file that I just sort of toss all this stuff into, should we ever need it, but,
I trash mine.
do you?
I mean, if we ever need it again, they can print it off.
That's a very, very good point.
I put it right in the recyclable as soon as I get
That's a
home.
very good point.
Unless,
I didn't know they wanted your.
You 86 it.
that's it, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm gonna-
My wife will just like, what is this doing in our house?
I'm gonna pick up that practice.
Circular foul. I didn't know they wanted any of our notes.
Yeah, no.
Nope.
It's all being recorded.
No need.
That's my job.
And it's also on all the cameras are being lit and, you know, so. Goes out on
I was watching some of
out on the computer too.
you know, videos on Facebook.
Okay, yeah.
You know, I've come to a few of these. They usually go to city council.
Yeah. Are they good? Yeah.
They're I like the, I know I like the public.
Okay.
I like
Yeah.
the city council meeting.
Okay, all right.
The
gotcha.
working sessions.
And you can go into the working session. See, I don't know enough about Ergo.
Shoot, no.
But
I couldn't see her facial expressions, but she's right down here.
There's the man with the plan.
Oh, my God.
Problem is, I can't remember where I put it.
well, at least we know what
That's right. Yeah.
Are we all here?
This one's got me completely confused. I wonder what he has to say.
I think so.
Yes, yes.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, the. The next case is case number 33-2024-Z-V/SE. The applicant and owner of the subject property is Reynolds Lewis of 757 West Princess Street, York, Pennsylvania. The subject property is also located at 757 West Princess Street and is located in the UN2 Urban Residential Neighborhood Zoning District of the City of York. Do I have that correct? UN2? Okay, sorry. The applicant seeks 3 variances and a special exception to permit the conversion of a single-family dwelling to a 3-unit multifamily dwelling. First, the applicant seeks a definitional variance to permit a multifamily dwelling conversion from a different use from a single-family dwelling. Next, the applicant seeks a variance to permit greater density than that allowed by the zoning ordinance. The applicant also seeks a variance to reduce the number of required off-street parking spaces from 3 spaces to 2 spaces. The application was reviewed by the planning staff of the City of York. The planning staff recommends denial of all of the requested variances and the special exception. The case was heard by the City of York Planning Commission on November 11th. And by way of unanimous vote, the Planning Commission recommended approval of all requested relief. The record before the board this evening consists of the application itself, the deed to the subject property, a September 6th, 2024 letter from zoning officer McMillian, an aerial view of the subject property, floor plans of the subject property, and 7 pages of photos of the subject property. And we were this evening given what I would just call a packet of various pages of additional color photos of the subject property.
Quick question to you. You said it was for conversion to 3 units now, because all the paperwork I have says 2.
2 units, I apologize, 2 units.
That's all right. There was discussion earlier about 3 units, but I don't think it made it this far.
Okay.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes, sir.
I think very nice photos. beautiful home. I know that you had talked about and thought about going for 3 units,
Right.
but I think we'll feel more comfortable. I'm not assuming anything, but I think we'll feel more comfortable with 2 units as far as neighborhood density and parking and like that. And I wish you well in keeping your 3rd floor kitchen if you want.
Right.
It used to be the city policy that if you wanted to get rid of an apartment, you had to get rid of the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
You could have a refrigerator and a stove, but you had to get rid of the kitchen sink. Now, that doesn't make an awful lot
Wow.
of sense to me,
Yeah.
but that's what it was. And the city plumbing inspector came out to make sure, to verify, yep,
That it was gone.
it's gone, or at least the plumbing. I
Yeah.
guess you could keep the sink, but not
Oh,
the
okay,
pipe.
so it couldn't be connected, okay, gotcha.
Tell us, I'm sorry.
Yes, I fully understand that, and we were discussing it with the zoning officer when I asked about converting it into units, and then the zoning officer did his calculation, and he told me that it can be easily converted into, so I agreed with that.
You just feel that it's a lot more house than you need?
I believe it's okay.
And you'll continue to live there with another tenant, is the idea?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's nice. I wish that was the case more often. I think if more landlords lived in the property.
Yes, to keep an eye on the property, to have good maintenance. That's good.
So are you on the 1st floor or the 2nd floor?
The 1st floor.
You're the 1st, okay. All right, so you would be renting out the 2nd?
Yes.
Okay,
2nd and 3rd.
2nd and 3rd, right, okay.
Will be a part.
But that'd be 1 unit, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any other comments or questions. Anyone else?
Looks solid.
For 2 bedrooms.
I mean, I think there's enough square footage to just call it
Yeah.
whatever it is, so.
Can I move to?
Sure.
I'll move to approve a variance to the definition of multifamily conversion from a different use as defined in section 1304.01-1.02.002A at 757 West Princess Street in the UN2 zoning district.
A second?
It's been moved by Mr. Nugent, seconded by Ms. Jenkins to approve the, I'm sorry, I think my wires are getting a little, what was the motion, Adam?
This was to approve the variance to the definition of multifamily.
To approve the, motion to approve the definition variance. Taking the vote, Mr. Abbott.
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Mr. Nugent.
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman.
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins.
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
And I'll move to approve dimensional variance for multifamily conversion from a different use found in section 1304.01-1.02.002 to include conversion of a single-family home into 2 units for the property at 757 West Princess Street.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Nugent, seconded by Ms. Jenkins to approve the conversion to 2-unit multifamily. Taking the vote, Mr. Abbott.
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Mr. Nugent.
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman.
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins?
Aye.
Jenkins, aye, and Williams, aye.
And
I was gonna say, we didn't talk really much about parking.
do we want to talk about parking?
I don't know, before we move on. What is, I'm a little lost on, because I didn't see it, the off-street parking. You can fit 2 cars in? Okay, that's good enough for me.
There you go.
Perfect.
I'll move to approve a variance to the required off-street parking spaces found in section 1304.01-1.02.002 for the property at 757 West Princess Street.
I second.
It's been moved by Mr. Nugent, seconded by Ms. Jenkins to approve the variance from the off-street parking requirement. Taking the vote, Mr. Abbott?
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Mr. Nugent?
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins?
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
And I'll move to approve a special exception to allow multifamily use as defined in section 1304.01-1.02.002 at 757 West Princess Street.
I second.
It's been moved by Mr. Nugent and seconded by Ms. Jenkins to approve the special exception for allowing conversion to multifamily use. Taking the vote, Mr. Abbott?
Aye.
Abbott, aye. Mr. Nugent?
Aye.
Nugent, aye. Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Holman, aye. Ms. Jenkins?
Aye.
Jenkins, aye. And Williams, aye.
Appreciate you, sir.
I thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thanks for waiting all night. We should have done you first.
Take care.
Bonsoir.
Dismissed?
Before we adjourn, there is another case which is listed this evening. Prior to the hearing, I received a phone call from the applicant's attorney, and there were some issues with both of their witnesses, one of whom was delayed significantly on a flight. Also prior to the hearing, or just prior to the hearing, I received a signed letter from the applicant's attorney granting a continuance or consenting to a continuance in this matter. So he asked that he be added to next month's hearing. So that meets all of the requirements of the municipality's planning code. There will not be any issues with deemed approvals or anything like that. So I recommend that we accept that continuance and adjourn.
Yes.
So moved.
If y'all want to hang out